They told you that being quiet was something to fix, that your silence made you strange, that your sensitivity was a weakness. But what if it's the opposite? What if your quiet nature isn't a flaw at all, but a rare code written into the fabric of your soul? For years, you may have questioned yourself. Why do I feel everything so deeply? Why do I walk into a room and instantly sense the tension that no one else mentions? Why does meaningless conversation make my skin crawl? It's not because you're broken. It's because you're built differently. You aren't behind. You're ahead, spiritually, emotionally, intuitively. What others call too much is actually your brilliance waking up. You weren't born to tolerate the noise of this world. You were designed to hear what no one else can. You notice the unspoken. You read between the lines. You feel the truth hiding behind words that smile but don't align. This isn't just personality. It's pattern recognition woven into your DNA. Carl Jung didn't see this as a dysfunction. He saw it as sacred insight, what he called introverted intuition, a deep river of inner wisdom that doesn't just observe the world, but interprets it. You're not lost. You're listening to signals others don't even know exist. You've probably felt like an outsider your whole life. People labeled you shy, aloof, maybe even strange, but they never saw what was happening underneath. While others spoke to fill space, you were tuning into the frequency of energy. You could sense dishonesty without proof. You spotted emotional shifts faster than most could process a thought. What they mistook as awkwardness was actually you absorbing everything. You aren't just socially different. You're spiritually sensitive. This isn't about introversion in the casual sense. This is a soul configuration that defies labels. This is the INFJ, the INTJ, the empathic analyst, the vision builder. You're the lone wolf who walks alone, not out of arrogance, but alignment. You don't need a crowd to know your worth. You don't seek validation because your compass is internal. You've always had a sense that you were meant to do something different, something deeper. And it's true. You're not here to conform. You're here to see through the illusion. That heaviness you've carried, that distance from others you've never been able to explain, it's not isolation, it's calibration. Your system is constantly tuning into truths that most people never consider. You feel the weather of emotion in a room. You sense when someone's spirit is off, and you've likely doubted yourself 1,000 times because no one ever told you this was a gift. But I will. This is a gift. One that few possess. One that most wouldn't know how to carry. This video, this moment, is not just a message, it's a mirror, a sacred space for those who never fit in because they were never meant to. For the intuitive thinkers, the deep feelers, the ones who decode reality instead of reacting to it. If you've ever felt like your depth was a burden, consider this your turning point, because what follows will reveal the 7 hidden signs that you're not just quiet, you are spiritually encoded with a rare type of intelligence. One Carl Jung spent a lifetime trying to understand, one you're about to remember. You don't look at the world, you read it. While most people glance and move on, your mind lingers, absorbing details, dissecting emotion, noticing shifts that seem invisible to everyone else. You don't just see expressions, you interpret them. You don't just hear voices, you feel the intent underneath. Where others are distracted by noise, you're locked onto essence. It's not about being better, it's about being different. Deeply, fundamentally different. And that difference is why crowds exhaust you, why you often need to retreat, and why you feel like your mind never turns off. Walk into any room, and before anyone speaks, something in your body already knows. You sense unease. You detect performative smiles. You feel the tension between two people who haven't said a word. It's like your skin can hear things. Like your bones translate emotional pressure. You might not be able to explain it in a way that makes sense to others, but it makes sense to you. Because your inner compass isn't guessing. It's translating energy into understanding. Your nervous system is an antenna, always picking up frequencies most people don't even know exist. Carl Jung once said that intuition is not a feeling or a hunch, it's a function of the unconscious mind, mapping out insights long before the conscious mind catches up. That's exactly what happens with you. Your mind isn't passive. It's constantly processing under the surface. You don't just react to life. You interpret it like ancient script. You walk through the world like someone reading a secret language etched into reality. You notice the emotional subtleties, the energetic ripples, the disconnect between what's being said and what's being meant. You've probably been called too sensitive or paranoid more than once. But what people don't realize is that you're not reacting to their words, you're reacting to their incongruence. You know when something is off, even if it looks perfect on the surface. You don't just feel emotion, you dissect it. You can spot a lie in a smile, a cry for help in a laugh, and heartbreak in a perfectly edited photo. This isn't overthinking. This is a different kind of intelligence. Quiet, invisible, but unshakably accurate. Your mind moves like a strategist, even when you don't try. While others are caught in the game, you're studying the patterns. You're watching the players. You're predicting outcomes without needing spreadsheets or speeches. This is what makes you a natural visionary. You're not reacting. You're composing. You're not responding. You're designing. People underestimate you because you don't boast. But they forget the quietest person in the room is often the one with the most complete view. So when someone accuses you of overanalyzing, smile. Because they don't realize you're not caught in analysis, you're seeing layers. You're reading vibrations. You're tracking emotional blueprints. And while they talk to be heard, you're listening to what isn't said. That's not weakness. That's power disguised as stillness. And that stillness is exactly what the world needs more of. You don't just participate in life, you engineer it. There's something about the way you process the world that feels almost surgical. While others spiral in chaos, you detach just enough to study it, like an architect sketching blueprints from the eye of the storm. You don't react immediately. You pause. You assess. You calculate. This isn't detachment. It's design. You're not disconnected. You're deeply invested, but your investment comes with awareness, with vision, with purpose. There's a rare harmony within you, between the depth of emotion and the precision of strategy. For some, like the INFJ, emotion flows like a river, vast and profound. For others, like the INTJ, thought cuts through like a scalpel, precise and unapologetic. And in you, perhaps both exist, not in conflict, but in balance. Carl Jung spoke of this as the functional axis, a psychological equilibrium, where intuition dances with either thinking or feeling, forging something higher, perception, that borders on prophecy. This is why people often find themselves coming to you, not because you speak the loudest, but because when you do, your words carry weight. You don't offer advice out of impulse. You speak only when what you feel or see is fully formed, aligned, anchored. It's why your quiet has gravity. You sit in the corner of the room, seemingly invisible, but everyone feels your presence. And deep down, they know if you speak, it matters. You're not just aware of what's happening. You're forecasting it. While others get swept up in emotional storms, you're tracking the weather. You recognize the patterns in people's behavior, the emotional triggers, the repeating choices. You can often see where things are headed before anyone else catches on, not because you're playing games, because you're watching the game. And unlike most, you don't need to shout your predictions. You let the outcome confirm your insight. When you walk through life, you're collecting conversations, facial expressions, tones, reactions. Nothing is wasted. Even silence holds meaning. Everything becomes part of your internal database. You're not obsessing, You're building, mapping, forecasting. While others think in moments, you think in movements. This is why your decisions often seem slow on the outside. But when you move with power, with intention, with outcomes already in motion. You're not impulsive. You're prepared. You're not hesitant. You're precise. And that precision, that's what sets you apart. You're not here to stumble through life like a passenger. You were made to create pathways, to build what others can't even imagine yet. That quiet intensity in you, that's the mark of someone who was never meant to blend in, but to architect what hasn't been built yet. There's a strange ache you carry, like you were born into the wrong era, while the world rushes forward, addicted to speed and noise. Something in you craves slowness, stillness. You watch people scroll and chase and perform, but your soul, it wants to feel, to understand, to remember something deeper. You move through life like someone out of time, carrying wisdom that doesn't match your years. This isn't a flaw, it's the mark of an old soul. While others race toward more followers, more noise, more validation, you move in the opposite direction. You crave real. You seek what's eternal. You long for conversations that open the soul, not just fill the silence. You're not here to entertain or be entertained. You're here to uncover meaning, to bring something ancient back into a world that forgot how to feel. The chaos around you doesn't speed you up. It makes you withdraw, not to escape, but to listen. Carl Jung believed in the collective unconscious, a timeless field of inherited human memory, emotion, and symbolism. And you, whether you realize it or not, are deeply connected to it. You pick up on echoes from the past. You understand archetypes without needing to study them. You don't just think your own thoughts. You channel wisdom that feels older than this life. This is why you've always felt separate. Because your soul isn't of this time. It's of truth. You find beauty in forgotten things. A dusty journal, a line of poetry, a cracked painting, a voice that trembles with honesty. These moments nourish you. While the world chases the next trend, you're finding magic in stillness. You've cried over sunsets, over music, over the look in someone's eyes, not because you're weak, because you're awake. Because you see the invisible threads connecting everything, and you feel them tug inside your chest. From a young age, you questioned the things others ignored. Why do people lie? Why does no one talk about the pain they carry? Why does this world feel so loud and empty at the same time? These weren't childish thoughts. They were the first signs of your awakening. Most people numbed themselves to keep going. You, on the other hand, walked straight into the confusion, into the silence, into the mystery. That's what makes you different. It can feel lonely. Of course it does. When your soul craves the deep sea and everyone around you is playing in puddles, it's hard not to shrink. But don't collapse your depth for their comfort. Don't harden to match their surface. Your presence is a reminder of something sacred. You're not here to fit the tempo of the world. You're here to slow it down, to remind it of its heart. You're not too deep. You're what the world forgot it needed. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be felt. You carry a presence that whispers louder than most people shout. It's in your calm, in your quiet, in the way you observe without judgment, and speak only when your words are soaked in intention. You don't perform to be seen. You exist in a way that makes people feel seen. That's what makes you magnetic. Your ability to be fully present without forcing anything. There's something about you that unsettles the performative and draws in the authentic. In a world chasing attention, you're grounded in awareness. You don't need to chase. You don't even need to speak. Your stillness says enough. People might not understand why they feel safe around you, why they tell you things they've never told anyone. It's because you aren't projecting. You're holding. You're a mirror that reflects without distortion. a presence that listens beyond words. Carl Jung described this rare sense of self as the individuated being, someone who has integrated their shadow, embraced their light, and aligned all aspects of who they are. And when you reach that level of internal harmony, your energy changes. It no longer seeks permission. It no longer reacts. It simply radiates. You've walked through your darkness. You've studied your pain. And because of that, you don't need to pretend. You've transcended the need for applause. You don't gossip. You don't compete. You don't chase validation because your worth isn't tied to external noise. People trust you, not because you try to earn it, but because your energy is honest. Strangers open up to you without knowing why. Manipulators avoid you without knowing how you see through them. You don't talk about your integrity. You embody it. Your silence has gravity. It makes people pause. It makes people question themselves, not because you're trying to challenge them, but because you exist in a way that demands honesty. Your presence disrupts pretense. You walk into a room and shift the dynamic without lifting a finger. That's not power in the traditional sense. That's spiritual alignment. That's what happens when someone becomes whole. In a culture addicted to filters, to fake smiles, to curated perfection, you're something different. You're real. And in a world starved for authenticity, that's rare. That's sacred. You don't need attention to validate your worth. You already know who you are, and the people who are meant for you, the ones who see beyond the noise, they'll find you, not because you shouted, but because your stillness called them home. You've never been fascinated by fame. The spotlight, the glitter, the applause. It never moved you. What stirred something in you was meaning, purpose, truth. While others chased popularity like it was oxygen, you were chasing something quieter but infinitely more powerful: impact. Legacy, the kind of work that lives beyond you. The kind of presence that transforms a room, not just entertains it. Because you've always known. Being known is not the same as being necessary. You aren't here to trend. You're here to transform. You'd rather have one conversation that changes someone's life than 1,000 that get you praise. You're not driven by ego. You're driven by alignment. You don't want noise. You want resonance. The INFJ inside you wants to heal hearts. The INTJ in you wants to build something unshakable. Both paths point in the same direction, toward purpose. And when purpose calls, nothing else satisfies. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the sacred journey of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. That's what you've been doing, often without realizing it. While others try to fit in, you've been carving your own path, a path that often feels lonely, a path that gets misunderstood, but a path that leads somewhere real. If you've ever felt like you were meant for something bigger, it's because you are. Your inner knowing isn't imagination. It's instruction. People may not get you. They may dismiss your quiet fire as passivity. They may mistake your solitude for arrogance. But what they don't see is the vision burning in your chest. A vision you've never been able to put into words, but one that pulls you forward, step by step. You move in silence, not because you're unsure, but because you're sacred with your energy. Not everything is meant to be shared. Some dreams are built in private. You've questioned your journey. You've looked around and wondered why your life doesn't look like theirs. But that's because you're not here to mirror the world. You're here to shift it. You're not part of the crowd because you were never meant to be. Visionaries are often overlooked, misunderstood, even doubted, until their vision is undeniable. You're not behind. You're building something deeper than what the eye can see. So no, don't water yourself down. Don't swap your purpose for popularity. Don't silence your truth just to be accepted. You weren't made to entertain the masses. You were made to wake them up. One person at a time, one truth at a time. And when you feel like giving up, remember this. Your impact might not be loud, but it will be lasting. And that's what real legacy looks like. You've said it so many times it almost echoes now. I knew this would happen. People brush it off, thinking you're just being dramatic or reading too much into things. But deep down, you know. You weren't guessing. You were sensing. You've walked into rooms and picked up on tension before a single word was spoken. You've felt betrayal before it unfolded. You've known someone wasn't telling the full truth without needing proof. This isn't a hunch. This is your inner radar, sharp and accurate. You've watched people repeat patterns, and you've felt the storm coming before the clouds ever gathered. While others were surprised, you were already adjusting. Not because you're cold or paranoid, but because you pay attention to what most ignore. The subtle shifts in tone, the way someone avoids eye contact, the pause that doesn't match their words. You aren't collecting this data actively. It's automatic. It's how your mind is wired. Intuition for you isn't some mystical idea. It's a lived, constant reality. Carl Jung described this as unconscious perception, the idea that your mind is processing thousands of inputs behind the scenes. Energy, microexpressions, silence, hesitation. And while most people's systems filter that out, yours stores it, absorbs it, interprets it. You aren't psychic, you're perceptive. Dangerously perceptive. People think you're calm because you're unaffected, but really, you're calculating, processing, deciding. You don't react, you adjust. Strategically, silently. This is why some people leave you emotionally exhausted, even if the conversation was normal. Your system picked up on all the things they were trying to hide. The anxiety behind their laughter, the jealousy in their compliments, the manipulation tucked inside their kindness. You don't just hear what's being said, you hear what's being meant. And that's not something you learned, it's something you are. You've probably been called intense. Too much. Too tuned in. But what they don't realize is that your sensitivity is not fragility, it's precision. It's discernment. You don't just see red flags, you notice when the wind starts to shift. You sense the change before it becomes visible. This isn't magic. It's mastery. A lifetime of observation. A soul trained by silence and sharpened by solitude. So the next time someone asks, "How did you know?" don't feel the need to explain. Just smile. Because the truth is, your soul has been paying attention long before your mouth ever needed to speak. And that's your edge. That's your protection. That's your purpose. You weren't made to miss things. You were made to see through them. You don't just question the world. You question yourself. Not out of insecurity, but out of a relentless hunger for truth. While others settle for easy answers, you keep digging. You don't want surface-level clarity. You want to peel back the layers until you uncover what's real. Who am I beneath the expectations, the trauma, the conditioning? Why do I feel everything like a tidal wave? What am I truly here to do? These aren't fleeting thoughts. They are your inner compass guiding you to something deeper. You're not confused. You're becoming. You're in the middle of a sacred unraveling, the painful and necessary process of stripping away everything you were told to be in order to remember who you actually are. This kind of self-inquiry scares people. It's not glamorous. It's not comfortable. But you've chosen it. You've chosen truth over ease, alignment over approval. That takes courage the world rarely acknowledges. While others numb themselves with distraction, you sit with the ache until it teaches you something. Carl Jung believed this process was not madness. It was sacred. The soul's invitation into individuation. To become your most authentic self, you must first face every false layer. You must question what you inherited, what you internalized, what you never asked for but carry anyway. That's what you're doing. You're not lost. You're excavating. You're peeling back belief systems that never belonged to you. And yes, it hurts. But beneath that pain is clarity that can't be faked. You mourn the version of yourself you never got to be. The child who was too deep, too different, too sensitive for the world around them. You feel grief not for what was lost, but for what was never allowed to bloom. And yet, in the middle of that sorrow, something else is rising. A truth so pure, so hard-earned, it cannot be shaken. You're learning that real peace doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from understanding it. This is why you can't pretend to be okay when you're not. Why shallow advice makes you angry. Why you can't just move on when something feels unresolved. You don't heal by ignoring things. You heal by going into the wound and listening. You're not being dramatic. You're being honest. You want peace that's rooted in truth, not numbness. Even if that truth costs you comfort, even if it takes time, even if it means walking alone. So if you're in that season right now, questioning everything, feeling like the ground beneath you is cracking, know this: it's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. You're not unraveling to fall apart. You're unraveling to come home, to your essence, to your purpose. And when you emerge, you won't just be healed, you'll be whole. Not because you found all the answers, but because you stopped lying to yourself. And that is where real power begins. Most people spend their lives avoiding their own darkness. They stay busy, stay loud, stay distracted, anything to keep from looking inward. But you did the unthinkable. You turned toward the very part of yourself you were told to bury. You sat with your shadow. You faced the parts of you that were ignored, silenced, or shamed. You didn't run. You stayed. You stared into the places you were afraid of, and you listened. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't poetic. It was raw. You met the version of yourself who carried the anger, the guilt, the unspoken grief, the part of you that never felt enough, the wounds you were told to get over, the memories that lingered in your bones. You didn't fight them. You welcomed them, not because it was easy, but because you knew healing doesn't happen by pretending pain doesn't exist. It happens when you invite that pain to speak. Carl Jung once wrote that enlightenment doesn't come by imagining light. It comes from making the darkness conscious. You did that. You brought awareness into your hurt. You didn't deny it. You didn't shame it. You allowed it to exist. And in that space, you found your power. Not the kind of power that dominates, but the kind that understands. The kind that makes space. The kind that makes space. The kind that transforms. You gave yourself what no one else ever did. Permission to feel it all. You became the protector your inner child never had. You held space for your sadness. You honored your rage. You let the heartbreak speak without interrupting it. And slowly, without fanfare or applause, you began to reassemble yourself, not into who the world expected you to be, but into who you really are. Now, when people say you seem calm, they don't realize it's the calm of someone who's been to war with themselves and made peace. You aren't unbothered because life has been easy. You're steady because you faced the storm and stayed standing. You didn't destroy your darkness. You integrated it. You didn't reject the messy parts of your humanity. You turned them into your greatest teachers. You're not soft. You're sovereign. You're not fragile. You're forged. You are the living proof that peace isn't given. It's earned. That light doesn't mean anything unless you've known the dark. You didn't just heal your pain. You became the healer. And now, every time you walk into a room, you carry more than wisdom. You carry wholeness, not perfection, wholeness. And that, more than anything, is your true origin story. You don't just witness pain, you absorb it. You feel the unspoken grief in someone's eyes, the crack in their voice, the silence between their words. You carry the weight of others, not because you choose to, but because something in you simply can't ignore it. You don't look away. You lean in. You don't ask, "What's wrong?" because you already feel it vibrating in your chest. It's not empathy as a concept. It's empathy as a language, one your soul has spoken since before you even knew the word. People have probably called you too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. But what they don't understand is that your sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's a signal. You're tuned in to a frequency most people can't hear. The INFJ within you feels it all like a wave crashing through the heart. The INTJ within you sees pain as a problem to solve, a pattern to break. Either way, you respond. Whether it's by comforting or by strategizing, you can't stand by and watch suffering unfold. Carl Jung believed that empathy was not just emotional. It was archetypal, a link to the collective unconscious, a tether between souls. And you, more than most, feel that connection. You're not just reacting to pain. You're remembering it, as if somewhere deep in your spiritual DNA you've held it before, lived it before, and now you recognize it in others before they even know how to speak it. You cry over moments no one else notices. You carry invisible heaviness after conversations that seemed casual. You sometimes need a day to recover from being in a crowded room because your body soaked up every emotion no one admitted. This isn't overreaction. This is atonement. And yes, it's overwhelming. Yes, it's draining. But it's also sacred, because in a world that numbs, scrolls, and shrugs, you feel, you see, you care. That kind of depth doesn't come without cost. You've had to learn how to protect your energy, how to set boundaries not to be cruel, but to survive. Because your heart is open, but it's not a dumping ground. You're not here to carry everyone. You're here to mirror their pain back to them with compassion and clarity. You're here to remind others they're not invisible, that someone does see them, and that maybe, just maybe, healing is possible. Your sensitivity is your superpower. And though it often feels like a burden, it is also the very thing that makes you a healer, a guide, a refuge. You don't just hear people, you hold them. In your energy, in your gaze, in your silent understanding. You're not fragile. You're fiercely awake. And that awareness, that ability to carry another soul's ache without flinching, that's not weakness. That's what makes you rare. People think you're zoning out when your gaze softens and you slip into silence. But you're not escaping reality. You're building it. Your imagination isn't a distraction. It's a sacred space, a workshop where dreams take shape and future realities are born. While others see fantasy as fiction, you use it as a tool, as a bridge between the unseen and the unfolding. What you daydream isn't random. It's a download, a glimpse of what could be if only you keep walking toward it. Your mind doesn't drift aimlessly. It travels with purpose. You walk through entire blueprints of your future like you're already living them. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened, not because you're anxious, but because you sense they will. You see visions with such clarity that they feel more real than the world around you. And when you return from that internal realm, you carry with you fragments of the life you're creating consciously, deliberately. Carl Jung called this active imagination, a way of entering into symbolic thought, engaging directly with the unconscious, and receiving wisdom from within. You're not making things up. You're translating them. Every image, every metaphor, every whisper from your soul carries instruction. And while others may dismiss it, you've always known better. You know your imagination isn't an escape. It's evidence of what's coming. A prelude to purpose. You've lived entire lifetimes in silence, built universes no one else will ever fully see, and yet, slowly, piece by piece, you bring them into reality. You reverse engineer your dreams, not with urgency, but with sacred, strategic steps. You don't speak about them to everyone. You don't post your process. You become the vision before the world even realizes you're creating one. That's not delusion. That's divine alignment. There will always be people who don't understand, who think your imagination is naive, who ask why you spend so much time in your head. But what they don't know is that what's in your head is becoming what's under your feet, that your inner world is the origin of everything that will one day touch their outer world. You don't just dream, you architect. And you've always known. If you can feel it, if you can see it, it's real. So don't shrink your mind to fit their mold. Don't dull your vision to match their limitations. Your imagination is not a child's game. It's a sacred inheritance. A glimpse of the infinite expressed through your soul. So keep dreaming. Keep walking those mental hallways. Keep building worlds no one understands. Until they exist. Because that's what you're here for. Not to repeat reality, but to remake it. You've never needed a stage to feel powerful. You've never chased applause, never begged for attention, never shouted, just to be heard. And yet, your presence speaks volumes. You lead not with volume, but with vibration. Not with dominance, but with long before anyone noticed. You were already shaping the atmosphere. Not because you wanted followers, but because you had something sacred to carry. You've always been a quiet force, and that's exactly what this world desperately needs. While others scramble for control, you've mastered something greater: self. You've walked through fire, not just the fire of life, but the fire within. You've confronted your flaws, your patterns, your pain. You didn't pretend to be whole, you became it. Carl Jung once said that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you've earned that privilege the hard way, through reflection, through silence, through soul work. Few ever dare to attempt. You don't lead with ego. You lead with experience. You've been where they are, lost, uncertain, overwhelmed. That's why when people fall apart, they come to you. Not for advice, but for clarity. For present, because something about the way you move, slow, certain, grounded, reminds them that peace is still possible. You don't need to fix everything. You simply hold space, and in that space, healing begins. Your stillness is not passive. It's proof of what you've endured. Your gaze carries wisdom no book could teach. Your energy holds the echo of nights spent rebuilding yourself in the dark. You don't demand trust, you inspire it. You don't seek recognition, you become the evidence. While others perform leadership, you embody it. Your very existence is a quiet call for others to rise, not by becoming someone else, but by becoming themselves. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to be understood by everyone, because you weren't made to follow. You were made to remind. Remind this world what authenticity looks like, what inner strength feels like, what it means to lead from the inside out. You don't motivate with flashy words. You awaken people just by being, because the truth you carry doesn't need a microphone, it needs a mirror, and you've become that mirror. So walk forward, not with noise, but with knowing, the knowing that your sensitivity is strength, that your silence holds power, that your intuition is intelligence. You're not here to explain your soul to the world. You're here to anchor it, to live it, to become the signal others didn't know they needed. You are not just an INFJ, not just an INTJ. You are a living blueprint of ancient intelligence, timeless vision, and inner leadership. Welcome home. You've always been the light you were searching for.